Thanks for watching Open Line. Tonight we are discussing severe weather anxiety. We do have the potential for some severe storms over the next 48 hours. And we also just had the anniversary of the deadly tornadoes just 2 weeks ago. We've been getting some calls. People are interested in sharing their stories with Samuel Rainey, who is a licensed counselor and therapist. I'm going to take Tanya's call right now. Tanya, you are live on Open Line.
Hey, Samuel.
Yeah.
Hey, Tanya.
Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you. Do you have a?
Okay.
Yeah.
Sam. Yes. I was calling actually in response to your advice regarding telling the truth to children and/or discussing, obviously with children and based on the last caller, adults, fears and anxiety are a huge thing, not only with the storms, weather storms that come, but storms in life. Your process group that you're having, I'm just curious, is it a faith-based project or class? Because God has a lot to do for anxiety for myself, and I think with other people. I'm just curious, is this a faith-based program? Are you a spiritual person, and do you believe in God? And I'll leave you to answer that question. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Tanya.
Yeah. Thanks, Tanya. It's a great question. Yes, personally, I do believe in God and am a Christian. And this group, and really my approach to helping people in all walks of life in my counseling practice is wanting to invite them in with where they are in their process of life. And so this group on Friday, the next 2 Fridays, while they're not overtly Christian in nature, there certainly is room for people to bring that part of their journey or that part of their story if they like, because that's certainly a huge piece of life and of how we make sense of life. And so if that's something that you need to bring in or you would like to bring in, that absolutely is a part of it. And I think as you mentioned it, of parenting kids and telling them the truth, that certainly if that's your background and if that is the framework that makes sense with life and that you want to raise your kids in, then integrating God into the conversation about storms and about the sometimes unknowns about what takes place and the faith in how your relationship with God or your faith with God can grow in times of stress and in times of difficulties that weather storms can bring, but also the storms of life as well.
I love that you just said, come as you are to these process groups. That is important. And a lot of people will come to these process groups as a new Tennessean, perhaps, a new Nashvilleian. We have a record number of people moving here from the West Coast, from the Northeast. I'm one of those people. And my first tornado forecast, or the potential for one, was new. And most of the storms that I knew of, Samuel, I could see coming, a hurricane or a blizzard. Can you talk to people about the wake-up call that this event last year is, and why it's important that we are aware, and we are aware of the unpredictable nature of Mother Nature?
Yeah, so I think I mentioned earlier that I've got this fascination and kind of awe about storms. And I think prior to kids, or maybe prior to some other realization, that a storm can literally drop out of the sky. A tornado can drop out of the sky on top of your house. And so as we watch the forecast and as we see the warnings come about, maybe the natural instinct to go outside and to look at the sky or to, stay in the living room and watch the television. I think those instincts of interest or fascination, I think those are misdirected ways in which we want to feel like we're in control, or perhaps that we're bigger than the possibility of a tornado dropping out of the sky, or perhaps just straight line wind that cause just as much damage and uproot trees and crash those onto houses. So I think that the preparation piece, when we know a storm is coming, I think it's really important that we heed those warnings appropriately, right? Not to get so ingrained into the preparation of it that we create anxiety because we're so worried about something happening, but doing it appropriately to where you've got a kit created, right? We've got your safe space that your family knows what's taking place, and especially for those of you that are new to the area, storms can come out of nowhere, and we might have a line of storms that's coming through, and there might not be a specific warning and you're on your road or whatever, but it can happen in an instant. And so I think a good dose of humility is really important when we're talking about preparation, we're talking about the anxiety around storms.
And I know you've mentioned having the right people around you and asking the right questions is important too. We have Mary who is on the line. Mary, you are live with Samuel Rainey. Do you have a question or a story to share?
Well, a little bit of both. I never heard it put before about the PTSD and not having control, which probably is at the core of what my issue is. So my question is, how do you ever take that back and regain your control of not having that fear of storms? And I'll hang up and listen. Hey, you guys have a good night.
Thank you, Mary.
Hey, Mary, that's a great question. Yeah, I think it's not necessarily going to be a step process about how to take back that control, because I think what happens when we experience something that's really devastating in our lives, and this extends beyond severe weather, is that it really begins to change the way that we look at life, and it begins to change the way that we interact with the people around us, and perhaps even ourselves. And so, trauma is a really devastating experience for people. And so, if you've had trauma related to a storm, I think I would kind of advise you less about getting back into more control about what has taken place, and more about integrating your experience of what that traumatic experience was with what you now know to be true about life. Because I think that change is a part of life, and things happening to us is a part of life. And if we live life so as to keep things so simple and so controlled, we're probably not going to be able to leave our house, and we're probably not going to be able to expand much outside of the four walls of our homes. And what storms do is it kind of blows up that plan of, I'm going to live a simple and really safe life to not experience anything that would cause pain or cause suffering on me. And I think that's why storms are so difficult for some of us, because we can control a lot of the things that happen in our houses. We can control a lot of the things that take place in the environment that we find ourselves in, and then storms come through and they say, hey, guess what, you're not in control. And so I think specifically, Mary, I would advise that if you're finding this experience of PTSD or this experience of trauma as being something that you're having difficulty getting over, perhaps seek out some help from a professional counselor who has some training in trauma related issues, because I think some really specific and key help around that with somebody else, I think that would be one of the ways you could heal and you could integrate those experiences into your life today.
I think it's important that we keep all of our conversations we're having tonight in context too, because as we look at the deadly tornadoes last year, they were extremely rare. An EF3, an EF4 tornado, our meteorologists know from tracking these throughout history, EF0s, EF1s, those are a little more common. Although they can still be violent, they can often not be as devastating. Although at the end of the day, you do need to honor the fact that these can get out of control and have a process. So can you elaborate a bit on doing drills at home, knowing where to go, and not leaving anything to the last minute?
Yeah, so I think we need a process to follow, because what that helps us and the people that we love, it helps us to know this is what's going to happen when these storms come through. And we don't know if it's going to be an EF0 to an EF4. We don't know if it's going to be straight line winds. We don't know any of those things. So I think when we hear the thunderstorm or the tornado warning specifically, that's not the time to start creating what you're going to do. Like, you need to have already established something like that for you and your loved ones, so that when the warning hits in your area, that you can execute that. So for me and my family, here's what we do. We've had several wake-up calls that have come up in the middle of the night, and on it, as a dad, that's one of the most terrifying for me, because sleep is the most vulnerable position that any of us are in our days, because we're completely unaware of what's happening around us. And so to get woken up by a tornado warning and then to have to go wake up your kids, that's not the time to try to formulate what the plan is going to be. And so what we do with our family is that when we know that there's a storm, especially when they were younger, we would just remind them, hey, here's what's going to happen. The storm going to be coming through in this time frame. And so we kind of, thanks to technology and thanks to great work by the meteorologists, we kind of understand a little bit of the time frame of when things are going to happen. And so, hey guys, the time frame is this, and it's possible that a storm is going to come through. And so we need you to not be outside playing. We need you to not be at friend's house for our older kids. We need you to not be driving during this time frame. We need you to be home, or if you're at a friend's house or if you're at work, you know what the plan is there, right? You know that there's a process to follow there. And so all of our kids know where our safe place is in our house, and we make sure that when they were younger that we got bike helmets, and we put bike helmets on our kids. And well, I've got tons of pictures on our photo library of all of us huddled into this closet in this bathroom that are kind of catty cornered next to each other. And our kids got their bike helmets on, and they've got their Sprite or something fun for them, especially as younger kids. I think it's great to have something that they can enjoy during the process of it, a candy bar or their favorite teddy bear or something that brings them comfort, that kind of helps to calm them down so they're not freaking out watching mom and dad freak out, something like that. So that's the process that our family follows, and I would encourage each of you to develop your own process that makes the most sense for you.
Excellent advice. We're going to take another short break. Samuel Rainey will be back. Call us 615-737-PLUS if you'd like to talk to us.